Hey everybody, my name's James Henson, and today I'm going to be talking about my future scanning project. More specifically, I'm going to dive into the information technology side of things, into the telecommunication part of it. What is telecommunication, you might ask? Well, telecommunication is defined as the communication over a span of distance that uses electronic means. These means come in many different styles and have changed over the years. The most common types of telecommunication over the years consist of the telegraph, broadcasting, and the telephone. There are many more types out there, but we'll be diving into those later in the discussion. Pre-telecommunication. How did people communicate before the creation of telecommunication? Here are some of the styles. Torches, flags, smoke signals, and heliographic devices were the only styles/forms of communication that could be seen from a distance back in the 18th century. The Claude brothers broke through with the newest form of pre-telecommunication in the late 18th century when they introduced the semaphore. The semaphore was a wooden structure placed on tops of buildings that allowed people to see certain messages. There were different types of signs that could be moved around and shifted depending on the message that needed to be received. So if you look over here in this picture, you'll see this wooden structure on top of this tall building. That is the semaphore, and it was able to be shifted and pointed in certain directions to relay messages, and you could see that from some distance back in the day. Revolutionizing the semaphore telegraph. Although the Claude brothers' invention of the first ever semaphore telegraph was great, their ability to relay detailed messages were really lacking. It was more like a generic message. It wasn't until a man named Nicholas took the Claude brothers' idea and added a twist to it. Mr. Kluberg added a shutter system to the top of the semaphore telegraph. This played a large role in the ability to send very detailed messages back and forth from a distance. So over here, I've kind of got like a picture laying out all the different positions and whatnot. And if you notice, it's basically got the alphabet and then a number system. So, there was the ability to decode it and send more detailed messages. This shutter system proved to play a large part in military roles because it allowed for the ability to set up the world's first international network connection between Sweden and Norway. The discovery of electricity and the idea of the electrical telegraph. Ben Franklin discovers electricity in the famous kite flying experiment in 1752. This plays a vital part in the future of the world. Who would have thought that one experiment, which included a key and a kite, could change the fate of the world as we know it today? According to my research, the first ever electric telegraph working on static electricity was constructed by a man named George Louis Lesage in the year 1774. Although he claimed the spot, very little detail exists on what his blueprints of the machine and technology looked like. He also had groundbreaking technology, but the thing that was the problem with his telegraph and it didn't take off and was popular is because it had shaky range and could not receive messages over a large distance. Telegraph revolutionized. The year is 1830, and a group of inventors, including the famous Samuel Morse, changed the future and introduced the world's first ever long-distance form of telecommunication, the telegraph. The telegraph worked by sending/transmitting electrical currents and signals over wire between different telegraph station locations. The creation of Morse code was also introduced. Morse code was a form of dots and dashes that paired directly with the English message or language. The dots and dashes could be transmitted and then decoded. The first U.S. patented telephone was created. So we're fast forwarding into the future here. We go from the telegraph to the first telephone. On March 7th, 1876, Alexander Graham Bell created the first patented telephone in the United States. Bell was a Scottish native who worked with his father in London, and they were assisting deaf people and helping them learn how to communicate via speech. Bell's first ever telephone simply came from his imagination and more his obsession with transmitting speech over wires. After I was doing my research on him, all I could find was how much he studied and tried new inventions and stuff, trying to get basically the first telephone made or produced. We're going to fast forward a little bit further here into 1927 on November 8th, where the first rotary dial phone was released or invented. Let's see here. So, like I said, the rotary dial phone was introduced on November 8th, 1927. This was the first phone you were able to actually dial yourself. Instead of getting an operator to make the call for you, like on the previous phone. This was a large step in the innovation of telecommunication that the world has ever seen. The rotary phone took the communication abilities through the roof and gave everyone a telephone number, which we still use today. The series of numbers were meant to be able to give people them for contact and make basically communication quicker and simpler in a fraction of the time. So pictured over here is the rotary dial phone. And so what you would do is you would actually, if you were dialing one, you would put your finger right there, twist all the way around to the thumb thing, let go until it got all the way back. Then you would do your next number. This took a little bit of time, but it was still a lot faster than previous phones. The dial pad phone. The dial pad phone was first introduced on November 8th, 1963. This new piece of technology only had 10 keys on it, as shown in this picture up here on the right. Ma Bell introduced the first widely spread dial pad phone, which was named the Western Electric 1500. Once a number was dialed, it was sent to a switching center where it was decoded and processed. The dial phone played a large role and had a lasting impact that many phone companies of the future still use today, which is the rows and columns of numbers. So basically, the dial phone, or the dial pad phone, once you would dial your number in to whoever you were calling, it would go to these switching centers. This is a switching center, and basically what this is this lady is plugging in cords to complete your call. So if you called, let's say, your parents, and you dialed that number in, she is switching these strings up so that call can be completed. So switching centers were all over the place as the popularity of phones increased back in the 60s and whatnot when this phone became popular. The future of communication goes cordless. So the first cordless phone was invented by a woman named Terry Powell on March 2nd, 1965. Terry Powell's invention was state-of-the-art, to say the least, but it came with a downside that ended up leading to the product not being as popular as its future competitors would make it be. The problem with the cordless phone was its range of communication was around 2 miles in a flat sorry, I can't speak. In a flat area, basically. It was even less than that in rural mountains with environmental stuff like mountains and large passageways that could block the signal. Even though this might seem like a bust to some people, Terry laid out the path of the future inventors and engineers to build off of her idea and change the future. After conducting research, she died shortly after this invention came out, and a lot of her technology and stuff was still used today within the phone. But diving into this a little more, this was the technology was no more than like a walkie-talkie almost. And if you've ever used a walkie-talkie whenever you're, hunting or anything like that, you know that there's a range on those. The more expensive ones nowadays can go for miles. But back in the day, 2 miles with a walkie-talkie was a very good range. And so that had some of the same type of technology in it, but it was just a phone. And so it's all about this, information technology and how the future keeps building a little bit more and more off of these inventions and telephones and whatnot. And Terry Powell definitely, paved the way for phones to, be what they are today. First mobile phone was called the Dynatac phone. It is pictured here on the right. The first cell phone was invented by Martin Cooper on April 3rd, 1973, called the Dynatac phone. Really large phone right over here. This phone allowed you to make a call from almost anywhere. It had the capability of talking on the phone for 35 minutes before you would need to recharge it for 10 hours. Its only features included dialing, talking, and listening. Um, the funny thing about this phone is it was released at a press conference in New York City where Martin, the guy pictured here, made the first ever public phone call. Uh, Obviously, he called his company's largest competitor and bragged that he was making this call from a mobile phone. So, that's what these guys do between each other. They're always trying to get ahead of each other. And so this was the first mobile phone, the Dynatac. A couple of these are later series, but this one pictured right here and right here are the Dynatac phone. Introduction of the flip phone. On March 9th, 1996, Motorola came out with the first ever flip phone. This new design allowed the user to flip the mouthpiece open and close. If you received a call, you would simply flip open the phone and then close it shut over the keyboard once the call was complete. This design was very slim and lightweight, which made this product very popular. The net weight was around 4 ounces. Phones in the past, such as the Dynatac phone, was a very large phone that you could barely fit into your pocket, and it wasn't very accessible or concealable. Whereas this StarTAC phone, made by Motorola, really changed the name of the game. The ability for Motorola to improve on this size and the weight of their phones was a step in the right direction for the future of phones, not just for Motorola. Here is the first ever moving part on the phone, which is the flip thing, or the flip capability, which would cover the dial pad, but it also played as a microphone as well, and it would listen to you talk. Texting is created. The SMS concept was first developed in Franco, Germany, by the GSM Cooperation in 1984. I've tried to figure out how to pronounce this. Fredhelm Hilbrand and Bernard Gehilbert. The first text message was sent years later on December 3rd, 1992, from Neil Popworth, a former developer at Sigma Group Telecoms. Neil Popworth sent the first ever text message with the simple message of Merry Christmas. So this was a revolutionary time, for technology, more specifically phone technology with telecommunications and the whole informational technology. Because it got the foot in the door that, hey, we might be able to build off of this and make this more a common thing. And it was a simple text message that said Merry Christmas, but yet it was so hard for phone companies to figure out how to do that. And it wasn't for, the development of this product, especially Nokia. They were like the leaders and really working on texting at this time. But texting was created December 3rd, 1992, and now texting is everybody's life pretty much. Smartphones become smarter. In 1999, there are tons of different smartphones on the market, and it is a race between every tech company to see who can make the next best phone. At this time, Nokia 7710 was released in 1999. It broke free from its competitors with its need capabilities. Some of these consisted of weight, which was a 5-ounce phone, automatic opening slide, as pictured here, a bigger screen, and finally, the ability to browse the web on this device. So if you see right over here, this was the first automatic slide phone, which is,